everyone, welcome back to my channel and to another one of my Christmas card series for 2024. Just a quick disclaimer, I am doing this voiceover outside and we are having a hornet issue. So if I make crazy sounds, it's because I'm being chased by a hornet. Today I'm going to be using the Fresh Air Holiday set from Simon Says Stamp. I'm going to be using 3 Simon Says Stamp Positively Saturated inks, Sprout, Field, and, well, I can't remember the other one, but I'll list it below. And then I purchased back a while ago some, when companies have like a surplus of like scrapbooking stuff, this is from Pinkfresh Studio. They have like scrap boxes go on sale, and these were some of the embellishments that were in there. There's also some from Altenew, and there's also some from the Dollar Tree, which I didn't use today. I have a piece of cream cardstock that is just smaller than A2 sized, and I also have an A2 white card base that's 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 when folded, and I used this Waffle Flower nesting portrait arches die to cut out a fairly large arch from the center of this cream cardstock here. Looking back, I wish I would have made the arch a little bit smaller so there was more of the cream showing, but I ended up using the arches that I cut from that for something else that'll be in a future video. So first things first, we are going to do some stamping, and this Fresh Air Holiday set from Simon Says Stamp has 3 layers, and then you can do a 4th layer if you want to, that you can have be kind of decorative, so it can add like little baubles on there, or ornaments, or like a garland type thing on there. I'm not using that 4th layer today, but that is an option. And then my sentiment is also going to come from this set also. I will say that I have used this set last year, and it is a very forgiving set. But if you want to use the die, you need to die cut first. I'm not using the die for this particular card, but I will use it for a future card, and I will go ahead and make sure I die cut first. It's very forgiving in the sense that if you are stamping on a panel and you don't need to do any die cutting, you don't have to be very particular on how you layer them. You can kind of get them in the ballpark and they'll still look great. However, if you plan on die cutting or using a die, then you need to die cut first so that you don't end up having some of your inking or your stamping going off your die. I hope that makes sense. So here I'm trying to figure out the best way to get this card base in here. Like I said, I am stamping on like my card base itself. If you didn't want to do that, you could always stamp on a separate panel and just adhere that to your card base, but I decided to cut out extra cardstock and extra thickness and material. I'm trying to keep these very mailable, and so I decided to stamp directly on the card base. Here I'm using the cream panel to just kind of give me an idea on where I need to position this stamp in the center of this card. Once I was happy with that, I'm taking the first ink, which is Sprout, and the first layer, and I'm going to go ahead and stamp that down. I recently gave all of my all of my ink pads a spa day, so they are all very, very juicy. In fact, I think I over inked them, so they are very, very juicy, and the ink is actually beading up on these stamps. And that will happen if your stamps are not seasoned. So if they're brand spanking new, or if you just have an overly juicy ink pad, which you wouldn't think is possible, but is. So moving on to the second layer, and this is where I'm saying that this is pretty darn forgiving. You can look at the stamp packaging to give you kind of an idea on where they're supposed to layer, but they don't necessarily give you any like indicator marks on where to align things. And that's why I'm saying it's very forgiving. But if you do want to utilize the die, or if you plan on die cutting it, then die cut it first so that you can ensure that you're staying within the lines. In reality, I mean, they show you what layers to use for what color. And typically when you do layered stamping, your first color is your lightest, and and you kind of get darker from there with further layers. And that is the opposite when you do layered die cutting, which I don't believe I'm going to be doing in any of the card series this year. But just for your information, if you plan on stamping, you usually do the lightest color first. That's your first layer, and you build up darkness from there. But that is the opposite when you do layered die cutting. So the second color was Fairway. Yes, it's Fairway, and then Field is the darkest. So I just go through, I'm showing you one card completed here on screen today, but I end up making 12. The cards that I make in this series at this time of year, I sell one at craft fairs, and then the rest of them I donate to an organization based here in Texas that focuses on loneliness in nursing home residents. They are called Flowers for Anne, and you can find them on YouTube, or on Facebook, excuse me. So the last color here was Field, and that was the third layer, and I just go through and stamp all of them at the same time. You'll notice that I'm doing all of my stamping at the same time, then I'm going to do all of my gluing at the same time. This is one of the quickest ways to speed along the process when you are making multiples of anything, and that is to do all of the same step at the same time. So here what I've done is I have taken the negative piece of this banner. This also comes from that Fresh Air holiday set. And I have just taken that banner and nestled the die cut into the negative space. And then I put a piece of clear plastic or packaging over the top of that, just so that I can check placement. This makes sure that I don't waste paper. I don't waste ink. I don't waste time by trying to figure things out. So I just stamp it down, I ink up the stamp it down, and if I like the placement, then I can remove that clear packaging and actually put my die in and proceed. If I don't, if I need to make adjustments, which I did today, then that gives me time to make adjustments without having to waste my die cutting that I did. So once I was happy with the placement, I'm going to go ahead and put my die into place, and I'm using Sprout and Field for my stamping today. I did 6 with the Field and I did 6 with the Sprout. So I just ink it up, stamp it down, and then I use a pair of tweezers, or you can use like a little pokey tool to pop out the pieces, and then I just repeat. Again, doing all of the same process at the same time, just to save time. Now that that is all done, I'm going to take liquid glue and apply a thin layer of liquid glue behind this cream piece, and I'm going to glue those down flat. I would have used foam tape had I had a bigger cream panel to work with, and I think if I were to make these cards again, I would have made the die cut a little bit smaller, the arches die cut a little bit smaller, so that I could see more of that cream, but decisions were made. I did decide that this card needed just a little bit of interest. So I did decide to pop up the sentiment, but that is the only thing that is popped up on foam. And this is just foam that I got from Amazon, and I think it works really great. I haven't had any problems with the backer being difficult to get off, or it being too sticky or not sticky enough, or with it having like an odor. Sometimes you get things that kind of smell funky. And it's a good like dimension. So I've been really pleased with it, and it's very cost effective. So I just applied that to the back of this little die cut sentiment banner here, and then I'm going to place that kind of toward the middle third of this card, and then we are ready to really make these cards pop. And we are going to do that by adding these enamel dots. If you had sequins, you could add those. If you had Nuvo drops, you could add that. Stickles, any type of like glitter glue. You could even do that 4th layer of stamping if you wanted to. But I have an abundance of these little enamel dots, and I felt like this was the perfect place to kind of work through my stash a little bit. So I tried to have an odd number of, kind of the bigger ones, and then try to fill in. And I started with my bigger ones first. If you start with your bigger ones, then it's easier to fill in, as opposed to starting with your smaller ones and then realizing things just look off balance, or you're struggling to kind of get things filled in. These enamel dots don't really stick until you push them into place, but if you are worried, or if your enamel dots are older, I would recommend putting just a little dot of glue behind them just to ensure that they don't fall off, particularly if this is a card that you'd be giving to little kids. You don't want them to accidentally eat them. So ensuring that they are stuck down well is a good idea. So this one has all of these enamel dots from Altenew, and I did, I think, about 4 cards with all the ones from Altenew, and then the rest of them have Pinkfresh Studio enamel dots on them. And I did this particular colorway just because it was a little bit brighter and more cheerful, and I felt like the enamel dots that I wanted to use would pop off of a more fun and playful tree than kind of a dark and moody tree, I guess you could say. So all I'm doing is just putting these on until I feel like it's filled up and it looks balanced, and then these cards are complete. I want to thank you for spending time with me today. I hope that you have enjoyed this series so far, and if you've missed any videos, I hope you go back and check them out, and you will stick with me through the rest of this series. Until then, we will see you next time, and bye!